everyone, and welcome back to our series on Web Performance 101. If you have caught the first video in this playlist, we have talked about critical rendering path, the process that the browser takes to convert your code into a fully loaded web page. In this video, we are going to deep dive into one specific part of that path, that is HTML. You might think of HTML as just the foundation for your web page, but did you know that it can play a key role in improving your website's performance? With few small tweaks, it can make your site load faster and feel smoother. Let's explore how some simple tweaks can help improve your website's performance. And don't worry, it's all easier than it sounds. Let's start with semantic HTML. These are elements like header, nav, and section, and many more elements are there that describe what your content is and not just how it looks. So, why does this matter for performance? So, we can see that we have two HTML files. On my left side, I have written the code in non-semantic manner, which means that I have only used divs to group my similar kind of content. Whereas on the right side, I have used semantic HTML like nav, section, footer, and so on. So as you can see that the number of lines in both of these files are different, even though they are doing the same thing, right? They have the same header section, they have the same main content, and they have the same footer section. So when you use semantic HTML elements, your HTML structure becomes more simpler and cleaner. This reduces the total number of DOM nodes that your browser has to process, and fewer nodes means fast rendering and less strain on your browser. In the non-semantic section, we can see that we have to create extra divs just to wrap up the sections or to structure them. Whereas in the semantic HTML, the corresponding code for that additional div is just the header tag, which is the semantic way of writing that particular code. So semantic HTML tags is also understood by the browsers and assistive technologies like screen readers because semantic HTMLs have a built-in meaning. So you don't need extra classes or additional divs just to explain what each area is. And semantic HTML also helps the assistive technologies in specifying the meaning of each and every code, which is great for accessibility. Let's see in a practical manner how semantic HTML is actually improving the performance of the web page. So first we see that we have the non-semantic HTML file loaded up on the web page, and here we see that the semantic example has been loaded up on the web page. So I have already pulled up the network tab, and as we can see, it took around 3 milliseconds for the semantic HTML file to be fully rendered by the browser, whereas here it took around 8 milliseconds for non-semantic HTML code to be fully rendered into the form of a web page by the browser. This is one very clear way in which we can see how semantic HTML is actually improving the performance. Another way we can see is by seeing the accessibility tree. So here we see that the accessibility tree looks something like this. We have a static text, then we have an inline text box, then we have a list of items that is just list item, then we have another static text our mission, then we have an inline text box, and so on. So how assistive technologies work here is that they will just read through this accessibility tree. So this is how the accessibility tree looks like when we have the non-semantic code. But when we have the semantic code, HTML code would look more meaningful. So as you can see that we have a banner, we have heading, we have navigation, then we have list, then we have list items, then we have list marker, then we have main, heading, paragraph, content info, and then static text. So just at the first glance itself, we can see that how clearly it is able to convey the meaning of each and every HTML element that has been used, or each and every HTML tag that has been used. It is much more semantic, much more meaningful, and it is also making the entire DOM tree look very clean and simple as compared to the non-semantic one. This was a very small example, but we can see that how semantic HTML has actually improved our user experience and has made the user experience more accessible. Now let's talk about images. They're often the biggest files on your page, and if you're not careful, they can cause serious performance issues. Have you ever seen the content jump around as your images are loading? That's called cumulative layout shift or CLS. So, how can we fix this issue? So, the way we can fix this issue is by always specifying the width and height of the images. It's like telling the browser that, okay, can you reserve this much space for the image? This prevents layout shift and makes the page feel much more smoother. So, to show you the code, I have added a image tag here in the non-semantic HTML file. I have not mentioned the width and height of the image, whereas in the semantic HTML, I have mentioned the width and height. So let me load it, and as we can see that first the content was there. So if I load it again, you can see that the content was appearing first and then the image was sort of pushed down between the text. Whereas in the semantic HTML, you can see that there was a blank space between the text that was reserved automatically by the browser because we had specified the width and height for the image. Because we have specified the width and height, it is also looking much more prettier from a user perspective. Whereas if we see the non-semantic example, the image is just, it's just stretched out all over the web page, and it is not at all a very desirable user experience. Also, let me just show you the size that this image has occupied. Let me show you in the network tab. So this is basically taking 1.2 MB size, and it has taken 24 milliseconds to load up. So this goes to show that how large your images are, and if you are not very careful, they can genuinely cause serious performance issues. Next up, let's make the images smarter with SRC set and sizes. These attributes let the browser load different images on the screen depending on the user's screen size, which means that mobile users will get smaller images, whereas desktop users might get bigger images. This is very helpful because this saves up the bandwidth and also speeds up the load time of the web page. So here in the code, I have added these SRC set and sizes attribute in the image tag, and what this means is that I have added two images here, that is dog.jpg and dog2.avif. So these are just different type of images. The width that is going to be occupied by dog.jpg is 500 pixel, whereas for the dog2 it is going to occupy 1000 pixel. What does the sizes attribute does? Sizes attribute describes the layout size in pixels that the image should occupy on the screen relative to the viewport width. And how does this work exactly is that you can think of it like a set of CSS media queries that the browser uses to calculate like which image they should load up from the SRC set. In this example, if we have added this max width of 600 pixel and 500 pixel, right? So what does this mean? That if the viewport is 600 pixel wide or smaller, then the image should occupy 500 pixel on the screen. Whereas if the viewport is wider than 600 pixel, then the image should occupy 1000 pixel on the screen. So this 500 pixel and 1000 pixel are basically determining the closest dimension to which they should load up the image from SRC set. Now I'll explain how this collectively works. The first step that the browser takes, it treats the sizes attribute and it evaluates the viewport width and determines the space that the image will occupy on the screen. So for example, on a mobile device that is 400 pixel wide, the image should take up 500 pixel, right? based on the max width pixel and 500 pixel that we have added in the code. And on a desktop that is 1200 pixel wide, the image should take up 1000 pixel. Now the second step would be that the browser selects the closest best image from src set. Now it sees that it has dog.jpg that has a width of 500 pixel, and for mobile it loads up this image on the screen. For a desktop user, it wants a image that has 1000 pixel wide, that is 1000 pixel wide. So for a desktop user, doc2 will be loaded up on the screen. Now why is this useful? This is useful because it improves performance. The browser is downloading the smallest image necessary and reducing the bandwidth usage and speeding up the load time as well. Also, it is adapting to different devices and ensuring that the website looks great on all the devices, whether it's a tiny smartphone, pad, or a large desktop monitor. And thirdly, it is also saving the data for users. So mobile users don't necessarily have a great internet connection, and you would not want to consume your network bandwidth by downloading unnecessarily large images. So this particular optimization is very helpful for slower networks. Now, a real life example of this could be that you can imagine an e-commerce website that is displaying the product images, right? Now, without responsive images, a desktop size image that is probably like 2000 pixel wide image, that is going to be loaded up even on smaller mobile screen, wasting bandwidth and slowing down your website as well. Now, with responsive images using src set and sizes, on a mobile device, a 500 pixel wide image is going to be loaded. On a tablet, a 1000 pixel wide image is going to be loaded. And on a desktop, a 2000 pixel wide image is going to be loaded. So we are providing a better user experience just by specifying different dimensions for each screen size. Now, a common misconception might arrive here is that, does this src set replace css media queries? So no, it does not. The way it works is that it works alongside your css rules, but it is specifically for optimizing images. And the descriptors in src set like 500w, that is referring to the width of the image, not the viewport width. Next optimization that you can do is lazy loading. So what does lazy loading mean? It means that you can defer loading images until they're about to just appear on the screen. This means that the browser doesn't waste time fetching images that the user might never scroll up to. And this improves performance because the initial page load would be faster by not fetching below the fold images right away. It also decreases the initial data usage, especially on mobile or or slow internet connections. Images are also fetched only when they are needed, speeding up the first contentful paint as well. So let me show you how this is exactly working. So in this code, I have just added few images of dogs. They are very cute dogs. And I have added this attribute loading is equal to lazy, which is adding that lazy loading feature to all of these images. Now let me just reload this web page, and if I scroll down, you will see that it is loading up more and more dog images here. So this is nothing but lazy loading, and this is how we are sort of optimizing network requests and also providing a better user experience. Next up is fetch priority. So what does fetch priority do? It basically rearranges the priority of the images, because sometimes not all the images on your web page are equally important. For example, in an image carousel, the active image is more critical than the other images. So what it does is that it suggests that a given resource should be loaded with a higher priority or a lower priority relative to the other images. And this helps in improving performance because it ensures that the critical or the above the fold resources are downloaded sooner, and it prevents less important assets from blocking the essential content. And by setting the fetch priority high for critical images and low for less important ones, you can ensure that the most important visuals are loaded first. This is a great way to improve your largest contentful paint a metric for performance. Next resource optimization we have is pre-connect. Now, what does pre-connect do? It basically establishes an early connection that could be a TCP handshake or a TLS handshake to external domains before a request is made for a resource. And how does this improve performance? This saves time on expensive handshakes, speeding up subsequent resource requests, for example, loading up fonts from CDN, and it cuts down nearly 100 to 300 milliseconds or more on external requests. Another resource optimization technique we have is DNS prefetch. So, what does it do? It basically speeds up the DNS lookup for a domain by resolving it early. And this improves performance because it reduces the potential delays when fetching resources from multiple domains. And browsers that support it will do a DNS lookup before the actual resource requests come into the picture. Next we have is preload, which tells the browser to fetch a resource early so that it's available immediately when it is required by the browser. Now, how does this improve performance? It is useful for very high priority resources that are not directly referenced in HTML pages, for example, fonts in CSS. It also reduces potential blocking delays when the browser eventually discovers these resources. And you can also think of it that it ensures that the font is ready when CSS tries to use it. Now, just to summarize what we have learned today, firstly, we use semantic elements to reduce bloating our DOM tree, improve accessibility and performance. Secondly, we learned how to optimize our images using SRC set, sizes by adding width and height, and also by using lazy loading. Third thing that we learned is resource prioritization that we can implement using fetch priority, pre-connect, DNS prefetch, and preload to carefully fetch our critical resources. So I hope you liked today's video and learned also. If you like this video, please consider giving a like, share and subscribe. And I would also love to hear your thoughts about the video. Okay, so see you next time. Bye.